This is Our Voices, Our Legacies, the Medical College of Wisconsin's Oral History Project. I'm Dick Katchke, MCW's Chief Historian. Today is September 18th, 2017, and we're talking today with Thomas Hefty. And Mr. Hefty is the retired President and CEO of Blue Cross and Blue Shield United of Wisconsin. And it was Mr. Hefty's leadership that led to the conversion of Blue Cross and Blue Shield and the creation of the Advancing a Healthier Wisconsin Endowment here at the Medical College of Wisconsin. Well, thank you, Mr. Hefty, for taking time to talk with us today. Let's start. You went to University of Wisconsin as an undergraduate and received your degree in economics, I believe, correct?
Yes.
What led to your career in insurance then?
Well, I went from the University of Wisconsin undergrad to Johns Hopkins University Graduate School in healthcare economics. Left there, came back to Wisconsin, taught at Ripon College, and then went to law school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And other than a brief time in Washington, D.C., in the Nixon administration, I spent my career at 3 different Wisconsin insurance companies and the Commissioner of Insurance office under Governor Dreyfus.
What led to you joining Blue Cross and Blue Shield United of Wisconsin?
Well, it was an interesting time. I had gone down to Madison with Governor Dreyfus. I knew he was not going to run for re-election in advance. And so I wanted to get back into the industry, and I had several choices. And I decided to come to Blue Cross as the general counsel. And also that connected to what I had done in graduate school, which was the economics of health. And so the career and the education came together going back to Blue Cross.
And when you came to Blue Cross, you were originally general counsel, I believe, weren't you?
I was general counsel. Blue Cross itself at that time was struggling financially. And so I was general counsel. They put me in charge of the building and cars and cafeteria and the very small subsidiaries. And at that time, the subsidiary had just started. It had a net worth of $3 million. And they put me in charge of the subsidiary, growing the subsidiary. And that little $3 million company eventually became United Wisconsin Services with a net worth of $300 million 6 years later.
And during this time, the situation in Milwaukee was that we still had the Milwaukee County General Hospital. By then it was called Doane Hospital. It was connected to Freighter, where services were split between the two. Health systems were just starting to evolve. Some of them were getting involved in their own insurance products as well. So it was a different time than what we're experiencing now. And it was really at the time, too, when the Clinton administration was starting to grapple with how do we develop a national health plan as well. Is that a correct assessment of the market?
The Clinton changes came a bit later. The 1970s, really starting with the 60s, the creation of the Medical College of Wisconsin, Freighter Children's Hospital, the closing of the Doane Hospital, the Milwaukee County Hospital, and the Blue Cross Blue Shield origin was Blue Cross of Wisconsin, started by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. And the Blue Shield, which was called Surgical Care Blue Shield, a division of the Milwaukee County Medical Society. And so the state physician group sponsored WPS, Wisconsin Physician Services, and the Milwaukee County physicians started a competing health insurance plan, Blue Shield. And I had been involved in the merger of Blue Cross of Wisconsin and Milwaukee County Blue Shield into creating what was then Blue Shield Blue Cross Blue Shield United of Wisconsin.
In the late 1990s, Blue Cross and Blue Shields nationwide began to consider and start to explore conversions. And this also occurred in Wisconsin, but in large part it was driven by your decision to step down to retire then too, wasn't it?
The last piece was, again, the changes in the Blue Shield, Blue Cross world nationally started a decade earlier.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
We were the first Blue Cross Blue Shield plan in the country to take a subsidiary public. We took United Wisconsin Services, which had all of our subsidiaries, and I had created, they hired me to create it. We took it public. And so half the company had shareholders responsible to Wall Street, and the other half of the company was Blue Cross Blue Shield, the old community health plan. And that obviously created some conflicts that we had to deal with. And I think that ability to tap the stock market created interest from other Blue Cross Blue Shield plans in converting. Our stock offering was followed by Indiana Blue Cross, now known as Anthem and the Survivor, and then followed by California Blue Cross, which was WellPoint, which did a full conversion. And so between 1989 and 1994, I think there were 4 Blue Cross plans which had gone into the public stockholder market, and we were the only one that was half and half. And it was that conflict which we tried to manage carefully. And I was the CEO of both because I had been the founder. and so the board didn't have to deal with the issues. But as I looked at my retirement and told the board I intended to retire, one of the questions they faced was, well, do you hire 2 presidents to replace me? Or do you formally combine the companies so there's one board, one focus, and one company? And the board decided, it was almost 20 years ago, to do the conversion, convert Blue Cross, combine the 2 companies, and move forward. And that plan was filed in 1999, and the board made the decision to give the proceeds to the state's 2 medical schools. The board looked at other alternatives, but decided that the 2 medical schools would be the best use of those funds.
And again, this was the only place in the nation where this decision was made. What were the factors that led to the decision that this was the best use of the conversion funds?
Well, the board looked at what had happened in other states, which we referred to as United Way type foundations. And some of those funds were diverted to other purposes. They became very political as to which organization got the money. And so our board did not want that. And we had a very high quality board. Mike Joyce, then head of the Bradley Foundation, Janet Steiger, former chair of the Federal Trade Commission, Jim Hickman, dean of the Business School of Madison, really high quality folks who valued good public service. And so the decision was made, and after looking at the other alternative, was giving the funds to the nursing schools in Wisconsin and the dental school, and concluded that the 2 medical schools would be the best recipient of the money. And so that process publicly started in 1999 and was completed 3 years later after a series of listening sessions, public hearings, and some challenges that were ultimately all rejected by the courts, and the plan went forward. But it was a 3-year period of uncertainty.
And it created a situation where you worked very, very closely then with the president of the Medical College of Wisconsin at that time, who was T. Michael Bolger,
Yes.
and then the dean of the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine. And you brought them together, and in some respects, it was one of the first times those two institutions were working together and approaching things as one.
It was unique and somewhat of a surprise that there was not a tradition. And the other thing that we learned was that neither school had a major presence from central to northern Wisconsin. The UW-Madison was in Madison, and the medical college had been connected to Milwaukee and southeast Wisconsin. And so I think hopefully the two of them working together, and you can see it today in 2017 with the medical college campuses in Green Bay and Wausau, that delivering health care statewide became a bigger priority. And I think I'm personally glad to see that happen.
Now, you mentioned the listening sessions. The two medical schools worked with Blue Cross and Blue Shield United of Wisconsin to host, I believe it was 11 different sessions throughout the state where the public was invited to give thoughts on how they felt the endowment funds could best be used. Do you think there was value in that process?
Well, I think it had two bits of value. One was the statewide emphasis, because the listening sessions were all around the state. And second, there was considerable pressure on Blue Cross and on the two medical schools to allocate funds for specific diseases. Breast cancer was one that a number of advocates showed up. AIDS and HIV treatment was another one that showed up, wanting us to designate in advance what diseases would be favored in the allocation of money. And I think working with the two medical schools, we declined to do that. And my favorite testimony from those sessions was by Dr. Paul Carbone at Madison, for which the Carbone Cancer Center at Madison is named. And he, on his own, appeared at a couple of the listening sessions. And he had a booming voice, a commanding presence. And he'd frequently start his testimony by saying, and I've treated many of your families in this room for cancer, and I just like to express my opinion. He said, Blue Cross has given us, the medical schools, the freedom to follow the science. And we don't know where technology will take us. We don't know what diseases will arise. But Blue Cross has given us the freedom to follow the science. And he expressed his hope that that would be preserved. And it did. And I think we all hope, that the world will change, new diseases and new treatments will have priorities at different times, and that the two medical schools will follow the science in addressing them. But it was an impressive statement of what we were trying to do. And Dr. Carbone died prematurely, traveling internationally on public health just a couple years later, and the Carbone Cancer Center was named for him. So,
after the listening sessions, the two medical schools then worked together and both created their plans that they had submitted to.
Yes.
What was the reaction to the initial plans that the schools submitted? Were they on the right track, or did you feel tweaks needed to be made?
They were on the right track. I mean, it was a combination of teaching, research, and public health. And it was the public health portion that I think generated the most attention. It was one that our board asked the two schools to put more specifics into that part of the plan, and they did. And that became the final plan submitted to the commissioner and approved by the commissioner and then by the courts.
In fact, one of the things that we encountered in the listening sessions was a strong movement to have the funds utilized to create an independent school of public health in the
Right.
state of Wisconsin. And it was determined that that perhaps wasn't the right way to go, but in large part it really helped infuse a strong commitment to public health in the two medical schools.
Well, that was the goal. And one of the things our board knew, we knew, Jim Hickman, then dean of the business school at UW-Madison, was on our board. Wisconsin at that time was one of the few states in the country that did not have a school of public health. It had quality physicians, quality hospitals, 2 quality medical schools, but it did not have a school of public health. And so one of the alternatives was to encourage the creation of a separate school of public health. And again, the board decided to let the 2 medical schools follow the science and come up with a solution. And I think the end result was good. The medical college has its public health program. The UW even changed its name to the School of Medicine and Public Health. And then since then, there was an argument that some of the funds should be diverted to UW-Milwaukee, which created a 3rd school of public health. And so we went from none in 1998 to 3 in 2010. And again, schools of public health focus on public health priorities. They don't do public health.
There were some court challenges. There were some groups that did not like the plan that had been accepted by the Commissioner of Insurance. These battles lasted for several years and wound up going all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, where it was determined that the medical school's plans were appropriate and the commissioner's order could continue. The value of the company really grew far more than anyone had really anticipated, perhaps back when the conversion process was announced in 1999, I recall.
Well, I think we were hopeful at the upper range of the value, but there was nothing to be gained from putting a big number out there and then falling short. And so the range that was given publicly was $150 million to $600 million. And the newspapers focused on $300 million as the value. In fact, the end value was $610 million. And so the upper range was pretty close. And I think that was good for everyone. It was good for the company, good for the medical schools, produced significant endowments for the 2 schools. And, but yeah, it was an unknown in part because healthcare was unknown. You had the start of the Clinton debates. You had challenges to Blue Cross conversions in other states. Kathleen Sebelius, who went on to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services under President Obama, was the insurance commissioner in Kansas at that time. Kansas Blue Cross had filed a conversion plan. Kathleen Sebelius, then the commissioner, held hearings all over the state, demonized Blue Cross, rejected the conversion plan. The Blue Cross CEO was fired in Kansas, and Sebelius went on to be governor of Kansas based on that publicity, and then Secretary of Health and Human Services for Obama. And so it was a time of uncertainty in healthcare, particularly health insurance, and I think it ended well in Wisconsin because I think it was a good plan in the sense of giving the funds to the 2 schools who would follow the science. And it worked well for everyone. But it was a time of great uncertainty. In fact, the Wisconsin Blue Cross conversion was the last conversion approved in the United States since that time.
I didn't know that.
There has not been another conversion approved since that time.
Dr. Cheryl Marana was the individual at the Medical College of Wisconsin that was charged to lead the Advancing a Healthier Wisconsin Endowment here, which was derived from our receipt of funds. You've had the opportunity to work with her over the years. What have been some of the projects that you've seen at MCW that you've found to be of interest as we've moved forward?
Well, I think the medical college and Dr. Marana has done an outstanding job of what I call stewardship of the funds. Combining medical education, recruiting faculty, expanding the service areas. I mentioned the new branch campuses in Wausau and Green Bay. And so I'm very happy with that success. I continue to watch the healthcare statistics in the state, and some of the public health numbers deserve watching, so to speak, in terms of how Wisconsin ranks. But overall, the medical college has shown excellent stewardship, from Mike Bolger to John Raymond to Cheryl Marana, and very pleased with what's happened here.
After you retired from Blue Cross and Blue Shield, United of Wisconsin, and Cobalt, then you've reinvented yourself. You've had a number of careers since. You served for a period of time as the interim county executive for Waukesha County.
That's correct. I helped the Kerns expand their foundation after the sale of the family company Generac, and the Kern Family Foundation recently followed up with a major donation endowment to the medical college, which was very good. And in that process, although I've avoided talking about healthcare politics in Wisconsin, I served in the National Academy of Sciences Committee on administrative issues in healthcare reform, otherwise known as Obamacare. And that was a very interesting project. But it was a group from the National Governors Association to mainly academic leaders, and two of us from the private health insurance sector. And I was asked, because Blue Cross of Wisconsin was the largest Medicare intermediary in the United States. We audited Medicare. We were the largest auditor in the country. And we did pieces of Medicaid administration in a half dozen states. And so even though no one in Wisconsin knew it, we were a major federal government processor intermediary in dealing with those administrative issues of healthcare reform.
You formed a lot of friendships here at the Medical College of Wisconsin, and in the process deserved honor and recognition from MCW as well. And that took the form of being named as an honorary alumnus of MCW,
right,
and the recipient of an honorary degree from MCW as well. What does it mean to get honored? You've also received an honorary degree from Ripon College, where you taught.
Right.
What does it mean to receive an honor like that?
It is a very nice recognition. It's that mixture of civic contributions, the corporate contributions, I understand. And in my case, since I had taught economics and public health, it was much appreciated. And it's been, rewarding to work with the medical college because they have shown such good stewardship of the money. And for the medical college, the endowment was a significant part of the reserves of the medical college, because the medical college started with very little money when it separated from Marquette University. And my quote comparing the two schools was that for the University of Wisconsin, the Blue Cross money was icing on the cake. For the medical college, it was the cake.
Well, I can recall Mike Bolger said that this was a transformational gift, and it really helped create opportunities for the medical college that perhaps wouldn't have existed before. One of the things that it really helped create here was our fourth mission of community engagement, in that many medical schools had identified community engagement as one of their missions. Few really could define what that meant, and with the endowment, MCW really had an opportunity for the first time to really be able to put some teeth into it. Did you watch the engagement? You know, community engagement is a factor that was of importance.
Yes, and I mean the public health challenges in Wisconsin are, as they are in most states, heavily concentrated in the largest cities in the state. And so, given that Milwaukee history, watched it carefully. Another business that most people did not know Blue Cross was in, we were asked by Governor Thompson to help administer welfare reform in Milwaukee, which we did. Again, that administrative process behind service delivery. And so we were familiar with the challenges. I had served on a committee for what's called GAMP, the General Assistance Medical Relief Program in Milwaukee. And so I was familiar with those challenges, and it's good to see the engagement. But as we learned in Medicare and Medicaid administration, in the end, it is administration. And answering the phone, delivering the service is key to making a difference. And we were always proud of our welfare reform success, which Wisconsin became noted for, because in the academic studies of welfare reform, the Wisconsin model was the best performing model in the country. And nobody knew it was run by private contractors.
As we approach the 20th anniversary of the Blue Cross conversion and the creation of the endowments at the two medical schools, what do you think have been the greatest successes from both schools as we look at this?
Well, I think the medical college has had the greatest success. I mean, it went from being very thinly financed to having more significant endowments. Its research mission has grown multiple times. Its outreach around the state has grown. And I think it's probably that statewide reach that I personally am proudest of as a result of the conversion. And I was pleased in the sense of we gave the two medical schools the freedom to follow the science. And the medical college in particular has done that well.
You came to Milwaukee in 1982, and you've seen the Medical College of Wisconsin grow and change over the years. Has there been anything that's consistent about about MCW? Is there anything in its personality, in its institutional DNA, that perhaps exists today that may have existed back then? Is the culture here different than what you may find at other institutions?
Well, I think it goes back, and I'm showing my age, to the days when it was Marquette University Medical School, a Jesuit institution. And that notion of values, of community values, human values, carries through more strongly here at the Medical College of Wisconsin than it does at most other schools. There are a number of excellent medical schools in terms of the healthcare delivery around the country. But I think MCW combined that community history better than most others.
As you look to the future, what do you see as the opportunities and some of the hopes and the promises for healthcare and for public health in Wisconsin in the years to come? And what do you see as the major challenges we may be facing?
Well, I think the financing issues will be the biggest challenge, whether that's state financed with Medicaid financing or the federal government Medicare reimbursement and all the intricacies of disproportionate share and medical education allowances. That will be a challenge, and until the federal government reaches a steady state of health care, it'll be difficult for all the industry participants, the medical schools, the hospitals, the physicians, and the public to know what comes next. And I think the institutional challenge, again related to Milwaukee, is the wide racial disparities in the city. They show up in economics, they show up in education, and they show up in healthcare outcomes. And again, one that can be measured, and if you can measure it, you can fix it. That's the lesson of business. But you have to measure it first. And so I think that's an opportunity for everyone. Hopefully we'll see some improvement. But it remains the biggest challenge for the southeastern Wisconsin area.
I've asked you a lot of questions. Is there anything that we should cover that I haven't identified?
No, I think, and I've had long discussions with folks here, the good news is the medical college has now moved to a statewide healthcare delivery focus. That was one of the goals of the conversion and the listening sessions around the state and the Blue Cross Board. I think the challenge is the institutional conflict that comes with that expansion, because things are done differently in Wausau than they are in Green Bay, than they are in Milwaukee, than they are in Madison. And I think I've asked the question, having changed Blue Cross to a publicly traded company, we had offices nationwide. We went from a one-town company to a nationwide company. And I think how the institution copes with that is also yet unknown, but it will be different.
Mr. Hefty, I want to thank you for all that you have done for the state of Wisconsin in your leadership of Blue Cross Blue Shield, the many civic organizations and boards that you have served on, but most importantly, for your leadership and continued support and interest in the Medical College of Wisconsin, and for helping to create the transformational gift that has enabled us to become a statewide institution.
Thank you, Dick. I appreciate it.